Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Stories That Inspire Us, the author series. My name is Janice Malillo, your host, and I am so excited to have my guest on today. And just want to let everyone know, of course, that we also are broadcasting through the Wisdom Audio app. So welcome to our listeners who are currently hopping on. I'm so excited that you are all here today. When I met with Craig a couple months ago to do my little pre-podcast chit chat, we had such a great conversation, and he's very, he is in the moment of what he is doing. And I love the fact that he wrote this amazing children's book. So without further ado, I want to welcome to the Stories podcast, Craig M. Porter Rollins. I'm so excited that you're here today.
Well, thank you. Mahalo, they say here in the islands. Very happy to be here and looking forward to sharing with you today. It's a great opportunity. I appreciate and very grateful for this.
Oh, you are so welcome. And as Craig mentioned, he is wearing his nice Hawaiian shirt. I, of course, in the Northeast am bundled up, and yes, I am cold. So it's kind of funny on one side of the screen, you know, dressed for the weather. And I, of course, am dressed for the weather, but, you know, all bundled up here. But let's hop right on into it. So your book, which is a fiction children's book, Pablo, the plate painter of Mazatlan. I know I was going to mess it up.
Mazatlan.
Okay, let me do that again. He wrote the book, Pablo, the plate painter of Mazatlan.
There you go. Very good.
Oh, thank you. And what's so impressive about this, obviously, beautifully written book for children.
Thank you.
Beautifully illustrated. His book, Craig's book, it was an NIEA finalist and won the 2022 Big Book Award and Paris Book Festival for children's fiction. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, a multi-international award-winning author. Who would have ever thought?
Oh, yeah, and that is what's so amazing, because when I read your bio, I mean, and you said in your bio you are semi-retired, but you were a CEO of a financial firm, correct?
Correct. Yeah, financial planning firm. Yeah, I was for many years, and a very different life than what I'm leading now and what I'm doing now. So yeah, I played with money for 3 decades almost. So yeah, a long time.
Wow. So, of course, one of my first questions is, how do you go from a CEO of a financial company to writing this amazing book, first-time author, and you hit all of these amazing awards? I just think that is phenomenal.
Yeah, I to be honest with you, I children's books wasn't what I was really thinking of doing, honestly. I wrote a book that was published back in 2011 called The Emperor's Dilemma, which is considered a business fable, and got a little bit of a recognition for that one. I mean, it didn't do terribly well, but it's a good story, and that it stuck with people. And when I was speaking in colleges and high schools over the decades, Pablo was a story that I shared often as kind of a criteria for students that, you know, following your dreams is very important. And as a CEO, when you're leading any kind of organization, you have to find a way to get instructions or get ideas to pass to not only your employees, but also your clients. And I found that storytelling was actually the best way I could convey the message that I was trying to convey in a way that was easily understandable. And so when it really comes down to it, writing children's story wasn't as far-fetched as one might think, because I was already finding anecdotes that I could use to help explain processes or difficult thing. And in the financial world, things can get real complicated really quickly. And the faster you can break things down into a more understandable way, the better off you are, and the better off your clients are, because they're learning and they can understand, and then they can either decide to invest or not to invest. But it's when we don't understand. There's a quote that I've kind of grown up with is, a confused mind always says no. And so, part of any good trainer, any good manager, any good boss, any good CEO is, you've got to learn how to explain or tell the story of what it is you're trying to accomplish. So really, storytelling kind of began to resonate with me as I got older. And I thought, man, if I could reach out to kids and start helping kids learn some good, positive, reinforced messages in a way that would be easy for them to understand, I think we can win this game a little quicker than waiting for them to grow up and try to, beat ideas into them, which never works. And so by conveying a simple story, that kind of got me into storytelling. So, from CEO to storyteller is not as far-fetched as one might think.
Well, no, definitely not far-fetched, but I think from just like a maybe a professional standpoint, but I want to point out some things that you said. Like, specifically, storytelling is the best way to convey your message.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I mean, when something resonates with it, think about it. I mean, we can use, older generation, my age and older, and maybe a little younger, nursery rhymes. We remember nursery rhymes, and to this day, Mary Had a Little Lamb, right? I mean, there's all these things that we remember, and those are stories. There are stories, Jack and the Beanstalk. We remember that there's a story, and that resonates in us. And if you've ever had kids, you share those stories. So storytelling is, for eons of time, has been the absolute best way to pass information on to the next generation. So it's kind of, I don't know, to me, it just seemed second nature. It seemed the best way that I could convey information. And so now writing, I wrote business books and I wrote a lot of business articles, which were very technical in nature. But the reality is, how often do those get read? But if you tell a good story, those stories are told over and over and over and over again. And if they have meaning and purpose behind them, they teach you, and they hopefully help us avoid trouble, or direct us into a good path, or focus our energy, or make us realize that there are, no dream is too big if you're willing to work at it. So storytelling it's fun, and it's necessary.
Thank you so much for that, because just like how you came up with the name Pablo,
Right.
Now you would mention something about, following your dreams are important. So
Right.
Did Pablo come to you during that time frame, or was that how did that name develop? Because that's a very catchy name.
Right. Well, so this story is actually based on true events. I actually went to Mazatlan back in the 80s, a long time ago. And I met the man that was the impetus or behind this story. And he was an artist there in Mazatlan, and he was basically capturing people's memories. I mean, he had a little studio there, and people would come by, and they would, he'd sit out in front, and he was painting. And somebody'd come by and go, he had these plates that he would sell, and he'd paint these scenes on the plates. If you've ever been to Mazatlan or some of these places, this isn't only happens in Mazatlan. I mean, there are places all over the world that probably do things similar to this. But people come by and go, "Oh, you're an amazing artist. Could you paint a picture of this scene, or a beach, or a porpoise, or a whale, or whatever it was?" And he would paint these pictures, and he would do it in just amazing speed. And it just captivated me that how could you be that good and that, do something that quickly? Well, obviously years and years of practice and education and training. So I actually went every day and visited with this man. And, when he would open up, I'd be there, or when he would close, sometime during the day. And I would ask him questions about, how did you start doing this? And he told me his story. So Pablo it's a name I came up with. And I don't know, maybe Pablo Picasso had something to do with that painting, and Pablo, and the name is just, very indicative of the area down there. And I just said, it stuck with me. So he became Pablo. But his story was very interesting. And so I wrote the story kind of around that concept. So there's a lot of true elements in the story, but because it's a fiction, but it is based on real things. But we told the story a little differently than the actual story to make it more readable, more palatable, and more understandable to people. But yeah, he had a tough time growing up. Grew up in a very small village, poor village, but he was talented. And the thing that I think was important is that his mother, his family, saw that and said, "Let's help him," and introduced him to his instructor, a man in the village who was a painter, and said, "My son would love to become an artist," and kind of started that journey. And it's kind of his progression to become the artist that he was at the end. And in fact, I bought a lot of these, but this is an actual plate that he painted for me back in 1980 something. And he just was a phenomenal individual, and actually, financially speaking, was doing very, very well. And because of my background in finance, that's what fascinated me, is how he was doing what he was doing. And he was making really good money for that time in that area, far better than anything I'd seen, and would be commiserate to anybody living in the States. So here was an individual who started from humble beginnings that was doing quite well. And his plates and paintings were all over. So, I mean, it's a fictional tale based on real events. I mean, it's quite remarkable, really.
Remarkable indeed. And, I even felt more the depth of what you were saying. And of course, having read the book,
Right.
that, following those dreams is so important. It doesn't matter where you're from. It
Right.
doesn't matter your economic type of status.
No, it doesn't.
You have that talent, you have that dream.
Right.
Follow those dreams. I think that's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. It's an amazing fictional based on true event story.
I know. I mean, think about that for a moment. You were so inspired by this young man, fascinated with his talent. And you saw something way beyond that. Maybe obviously at the time you didn't know that at the time, but here you are, having won awards for this book. Now, when
yeah.
Go ahead.
Right. No, it shocks me. I mean, I would have never, I could have, honestly, when we wrote I knew it was a good story. I knew it was a good story because it's resonated with people over the decades. But I never, and I'll tell you, part of the reason I think we did so well is because of Rufus, my illustrator, Rufus Zadojeus. I always mess his name up too. But Rufus is an incredible talent. And when I started talking to him about the story, pre-COVID, we started actually talking about turning this into a children's book. And I read the story to him, and then I said, "Take it home, read it to your kids." He had younger kids, and he said, "Man, they love this story." And I said, "Okay, would you be willing to illustrate?" Now, he'd never illustrated a book before. He had done a lot of like characters. He'd done a lot of artwork. He does a lot of the business storyboards, like the whiteboard, the animated whiteboard. And stuff. But I'd seen some of his other work, and I thought, if you want to take a crack at this, would you be willing to try? And he goes, "Yeah, let's try it." And so I gave him some concepts, had some pictures that I'd taken of the area and the village, and he came back and said, "What about this?" And he blew me away, because he literally captured Pablo. He captured kind of the look and feel I was wanting. And it was, I mean, that part was pretty effortless. I mean, if it hadn't been for COVID, this book would have probably come out much earlier, but it came out when it came out. He's just remarkable. And I think if it wasn't for his illustrations, it was very collaborative. I mean, if it wasn't for his illustrations, the story's good. His illustrations elevates it. That's the best I can say.
It really does. And of course, my grandniece, Reagan, and my grandnephew, Jedrick, fell in love with the book. And they're like, Auntie, can I take this home? And I'm like, well, absolutely. Like, I couldn't say no, of course. They
awesome.
loved it. So, you know, and when I think of them reading it, and now, of course, doing this interview with you today, you know, I can't wait to show them this, because I know they are going to be fascinated by the story of how you wrote this book.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah. Wow. When you sat down to write this book, and I know that for writers, it can be very personal in nature, and it's really a creative process. And you know, I've often shared that, you know, I'm in the process of writing my own book, and I guess I'm dragging my feet. But what was the process for you?
Boy. I think it was just perseverance. A little bit about what's in the story too with Pablo. He had to persevere. So it's because I don't know that I believe so much in writer's block as I believe in you get caught up in a thought, and then you are trying to figure out a way to move the story along. The story itself, verbally telling the story actually was much longer than what actually came out in print, because in storytelling without an illustration, you have to elaborate on the surroundings. And so for me, the difficult part was taking a much longer story that I would tell verbally when I would speak at high school and college events, to condensing it down so that the illustration added or lended to the story. So for me, it was the first time I've ever had to marry words with a picture that was already done. So the picture would tell a lot of the story. And so I think for me, the process in writing my first children's story, award-winning children's story, which I still have to kind of pinch myself every once in a while, is, I had to find a way to reduce the words and allow the illustration to bring the reader in. And I think that's, if I struggled with anything, I probably struggled with that, is how do you pare down your story so that the illustration can be more enveloping, that other dimension to the story versus just the words alone. And I struggled with it at first. I really did. I really had a hard time not wanting to put more on the page. As a writer, you throw up on the page. When you're writing, you're get as much on the page as you possibly can. Doesn't matter if it's bad, you can edit it out, cut it, whatever. And I've got pages and pages and pages of notes where whole paragraphs are gone, trying to whittle this down. And I think so. The process is just put everything on the page that you possibly can. Everything. Doesn't matter. Good idea, bad idea, concept, imagery, scenery, doesn't matter. Put it all on the page, and then just go back and start cutting away, kind of like a sculptor looks at a block of marble, and they see what they want inside this block of marble, and then they just say chip away the parts that don't belong. And that's kind of a storytelling. So at first you're building this massive block of marble so that you've got something to start chipping away at. Most people want to start making the Venus de Milo from the finished product. Well, if you're really going to be a good writer, you've got to look at it from a sculptor or someone who works in clay, or an artist looking at a blank canvas, and say, I'm going to throw everything idea I can onto this, And then what I'm going to do is pull back the parts that don't make sense. Had a
Mm.
cloud move in. I'll pull it back. Had a cloud move in and get
Oh,
dark.
wow, you have a cloud. And by the way, I'm kind of poking fun at myself because he's in Hawaii and I'm freezing in Connecticut. It's all good though.
And
Because,
it's a cold day here today for us. It's a brisk 65
oh, wow, that's terrible. Brisk
and
65.
rain and rainy.
Then you can relate to that. I don't know. Oh my gosh, hysterical. I love how you described, the writing process for yourself and just getting everything on paper and
Right.
then matching it to fit the illustration. Was it difficult for you at times to cut some of the story out? Like, did you
Yeah.
like maybe look at a paragraph and say, this has got to be in there, but then you
So,
end up
and I think this is indicative to any writer when they're dealing with their story, is that every word is so important to a writer. And it's almost like when you cut out something, it's you take it personal. Even though I'm the one that was cutting it out, I was like, oh, God, this isn't gonna work right. This isn't gonna read right. There's so much missing. There's so much missing, and you beat yourself up a little bit, but you have to realize that, again, it's like you have to look at the finished project. You have to allow yourself to get through the process and then look at your finished project. And the cool thing about writing is, unlike, working in something, a more solid medium like clay or not necessarily clay, but a canvas or marble. Once you make a mistake there, you can't take it back. Well, in writing, if you make a mistake, you just delete and retype, right? And so you have to not worry about the end result. The end result will be done when it's done. So you write, throw everything on there, cut things out, agonize over it, because you will literally agonize over it, or you'll convince yourself, no, that has to be in there. And then turning it over to somebody who's not read it, and let them read it with fresh eyes, with no predisposition to the story or what you've been laboring over. And a lot of times they'll either come back and say, wow, this is really good. Or they come back and go, well, I didn't understand this part. So that's why I'll always have somebody read the story after I get it to the point where I think it's almost done, like 90%. And they'll say, would you just read this and just tell me what you think? And that really has allowed me to not beat myself up in the writing process, because one of the most detrimental things that we can do to ourselves, we're our own worst critics. That's something that's very common. When Pablo was finished, I felt like it was missing so many things, and I just had to let it go. I said, okay, we have to be done. I had to let it go. And then when the reviews started coming back in and everybody just seemed to clamor for it and was so thrilled with the story, I went, okay, see, obviously I was being too hard on myself. So, but you're right. It is agonizing at times when you're cutting something out, or you're cutting a character or something. I'm working on I just finished my next book, and I'm going through that process right now where I'm going, but it just, but we're this part's not in there and this part's not in there, and it's agonizing. It literally is agonizing, because you feel like you're cutting off a finger or something, but at the end, when it's all said and done, you're going, oh, it turned out pretty good. So
and of course yours did. Now, when you started the process of having people or friends, family, whomever read your book, was there a fear associated with that? Like, did you think, okay, this is 90% done. I know I may get some constructive criticism, but oh God, I hope they like it.
Constructive criticism is great. And I think as a writer, it's so hard not to take it personal, because you're putting so much emotion in what you're writing. And if you're like Pablo and other books and stories and things like that I've been able to publish. There's a piece of you that goes into everything, and some of them are a labor of anguish and some of them are a labor of love. But the constructive criticism at first was really difficult for me. I took it really personal a lot of times. The grammar, I didn't care about that, because when you're writing, I just write. Punctuation is secondary. I'll get back to the punctuation later. So I don't care about grammatical. It's more of if they're coming back with, I didn't understand, or I don't get this, or why do you say that? At first that was hard for me to take. As time's gone on, I've begun to realize that that's exactly what a writer needs to hear sometimes. Because if your story isn't cohesive, if it isn't coming across, if you're not conveying the right story, if your meaning isn't coming across, when the person gets done reading the book, they don't come back and say, oh, I get it, da 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 da, and they list off a few things that they got from the story, and you go, yes, that's exactly what I was trying to convey. So you have to kind of learn to let go of how the constructive criticisms may affect you, because they're not offering that to beat you up. They're offering that because you said, read this and tell me what you think. If you don't want to know what somebody thinks, don't say that to them. Don't ask. But I've learned that some of the stuff that's come back has been extremely helpful, and I've been able to go back in and tool and tweak, and even on Pablo, same thing on Pablo. I had a couple of issues where the story seemed disjointed in a couple of areas. And I said, you're right, absolutely right. How do you get from here to there? And it's because I had paragraphs that I had taken out. And I said, okay, I've got to find a way to bring back in the bridge to the story so that it maintains its continuity throughout. So I used to get really bent out of shape about that a little bit personally, internally. I'd never say anything. Oh, okay. But now I've kind of embraced that. I've embraced it and said no, that's great. Thank you. And in fact, if they don't find something wrong with it, I tend to worry. And I've even gone to third parties that don't know anything about me, my background, and said, I want you to read a story. And if they come back and go, I didn't get it. Okay, what didn't you get? So I'm actually now, I embrace constructive criticism. I really want to get that. Because I know after 2 or 3 revisions or more, the story will be good. It'll be solid. And then we'll, hopefully win more awards. So,
So
So
you go through this writing process, you go through the editing process, you have people read it.
Yeah.
You have the illustrations. Now the book is whole. So the day that your book went live, I love asking this question. What were you feeling? Like, it just must have been so exciting.
Well, it was exciting. At the same time, you're always thinking, I wonder if anybody will even care about this book.
Oh my God.
It's like, I wonder if it's really any good. I mean, all the doubts, all the little self-doubts creep in. And I went through that a little bit, and I'll be honest. I mean, when we submitted it to several book festivals and things like that, I think we didn't seem to be getting any response at all, nothing. And then we got an honorable mention in the New England Book Festival, which I thought was nice. It's okay. So they liked the book. Somebody liked the book. But then I remember I had some friends visiting from North Carolina here with us on the islands when New York Big Book Awards, the Independent Press Awards, sent me an email and said that I had won. I'll be flat honest. I actually almost started to cry.
Oh my God.
I looked at the email and I turned to my wife and I said, I won. And I was just like, to me, that was like the ultimate validation. And then we won another one. And I just was like going, oh my gosh. And then we got the finalists for the NIEA award, NEIA award, that's one of the bigger ones, so that made me feel good. So kind of shocking, honestly. And there was a sense of validation. I actually was more excited about that than the book actually going live. I figured, well, if somebody buys it, they buy it. If they don't buy it, they don't buy it. I can't really control that. I hope more people buy it. We're available on Kindle now too, so that makes it nice. It's a Kindle version now too. So, but yeah, go ahead.
Do you think that it may be an audio book at some point?
Yeah, we've actually talked about that. We would like to probably do that at some point in time. It's not in the cards immediately, just because we're trying to get the Christmas I Almost Scared Santa Away finished. That's the next book.
I was just gonna ask you about that too. What is the name of your next book again?
The Christmas I Almost Scared Santa Away.
Oh, am I anticipating that maybe the character is a bad boy or a little bad girl?
The character is me. It's autobiographical. It is a true story. It is nonfiction, children's story. It is. I was a terror when I was little. I would get so excited for Christmas that staying in bed or going to bed became such a problem that my family had to resort to great lengths to instill upon me the need to stay in bed. And this one Christmas, they were going to teach me a lesson. And so the story is about how I almost scared Santa away and didn't have Christmas. And it is a true story. It is a true story. Yeah.
I am so excited for you. I can't wait for that book to come out. When is that expected out?
It's in layout design right now. So we've kind of gone through the first few edits. We anticipate, well, the book will probably be ready by the end of March, but we probably won't release it for publication until probably late summer, more to coincide with fall and Christmas, because it's that kind of a story. But it should be, it probably will be, it'll probably be ready for publication by the end of this month.
Wow, I am so excited for you, and even more excited for all the children that will benefit from reading that story.
It's a fun story. We got another great illustrator. I found an acclaimed artist through my aunt who does a lot of. I was looking for more of a Norman Rockwell-esque kind of look and feel for this book, and Carolyn Davidson, who an artist that we found in, lives in Logan, Utah, Bear Lake area, that area up there. Extremely good. I was tickled that she took on the project, and she took on the project after reading the story to her grandkids. And she said, this needs to be a story. So again, me going, read this, tell me what you think. And that's how we were able to get her on board, because I can't imagine getting someone of her caliber on board with the story, but she just, she loved it. So she did all. And in fact, actually we have 26 16 by 20 hand painted illustrations. She hand painted all the illustrations for this book. And we had to have them digitized. So this is going to be a very Norman Rockwell-esque looking Christmas tale.
Wow, I'm getting thinking about that, and to see the expression on your face and how excited you are. Like, that is phenomenal. Yeah,
this is going to be a fun one. I think this one will be a very fun book.
And what do your family and friends think about you as a children's author?
It's kind of funny. I always grew up, everybody always said I had the gift of gab. I was always telling tales, a lot of them weren't true when I was a kid, but I always kept everybody entertained. Nothing nefarious. I just, I could spin a yarn. I'm a Southern boy that knows how to spin a yarn. And so they weren't terribly surprised, actually. They said, no, this makes perfect sense. You've been telling stories your whole life. It just kind of like makes sense. So, I went into finance because, well, I needed to have a career, and I needed to, pay for things and be a responsible husband, be a responsible dad. I had, obligations. And so I did what I needed to do, and I love doing it. Don't get me wrong. I was good at it and I love doing it, but telling stories, this is fun. This is just fun. So I'm having a lot of fun with this.
Oh, that is wonderful. And Craig, where can our viewers and listeners connect with you further?
I'm on Facebook, Craig the Author on Facebook. I am on Twitter, Craig the Author 1 on Twitter, but that's fairly new, so we don't have much there. My website is probably the best, craigtheauthor.com. That's actually got some bits and pieces about the new story too. We've actually got some illustrations on there that you can kind of see the editing process on there. And then those are probably the best places to get a hold of me. And if you want to reach out to me.
Wonderful. And of course, I will make sure that all that information is in the show notes. What is one thing that you can think of off the top of your head when a child picks up your book? Like, what do you want them to know about the story?
I want them to see a little bit of Pablo in themselves. That anything that they love doing or want to do is possible. And Pablo, the reason Pablo, I think, is resonating is that it really lays out exactly what it takes to become successful to a child. Little boy loves to draw. His family members, his mother in this case, it could be my case, it was grandparents that saw great opportunity or a great ability in me and fostered that. And Pablo got put in front of someone, a teacher, an instructor, a mentor that could help him. And he listened, and he followed instructions, and he was patient, and was determined to do what he needed to do to be good. And in the end, he would consider himself successful. And success isn't necessarily about making tons of money or fame. Success is about you accomplishing your goals. That's it. Whatever those goals are. To me, that's a successful person. If they're just accomplishing their goals, if it is to get that next job, if it's to lose 5 pounds, whatever it is, to me, that's success. And I think as we need to, and I want Pablo and the other books that I'm working on, children's stories, to continue to convey that it isn't about the grandiose design. It's about, are you making your day count? Are you moving yourself to your next position? Whatever that is, not what society dictates, but what we dictate for ourselves. And Pablo is very indicative of that. And I hope that's what they get from the story, is they feel like Pablo wanted to be a good painter. Pablo found a way to be a good painter. Pablo became a good painter. And I think that's all I want them to convey is I can do this. I can do that. That's it.
Wow, that is amazing. Craig, I certainly hope that you will definitely consider coming back to Stories That Inspire Us.
I'd love to.
Oh, I have so enjoyed this conversation. Today, I am with Craig M. Porter Rollins, the author of Pablo, the Plate Painter of Mazatlan, an NIEA finalist, and again, won the 2022 Big Book Award in Paris Book Festival for Children's Fiction. It has been my honor and privilege to interview you today. I can't wait for the other book to come out, and obviously keep me posted. We'll need to get you on again when all that nice stuff is happening.
Maybe this fall. Maybe you could do it this fall.
Perfect. Well, you know, you heard it here today, and as Craig mentioned, storytelling is the best way to convey your message. How are you going to convey your message? If you have a story to share, it's that important. My name is Janice Malillo, the host of Stories That Inspire Us, the author series. Today, I was inspired. My little grandniece and grandnephew were inspired by Craig's amazing book. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day. And remember, really, your story matters. We'll see you again real soon. Thank you so much.